The StuG shoots is done. So I'm going to go through what it cost me to build, dollars and hours, and I've been keeping a build log, and I've accounted for all the money I've spent on it. So I'm going to walk you through that, and then some lessons learned. What would I do different on my next tank? What worked well, what didn't? So before I do that, I want to show you a few more updates, finishing touches I've added to the StuG. You can see I got the cross and the numbers added. There's also a cross on the back. I added some more green. This green stripe wasn't there on the hull. I realized it didn't match the green on the gun, so from above it made the gun stand out a lot more. So there's some added green there and a little more green on this side. The cupola does turn a lot smoother now. On the inside, well, first I'll show you the engine compartment. So everything's back in. Here's my replacement air compressor, and I added this relay. So before, the air compressor was back here, and it had the controller to set the pressure, but I relocated that to the gun, and now it controls, it just switches this relay up here to switch the compressor on and off. Here's the wiring diagram for all the electrical systems involved. Inside, you can see I've got a ammo rack for 10 rounds. Got the wire cleaned up. I put this, wire loom to seal it all up. And I did make a pad for the seat. And I was gonna glue it on there, but it's actually, maybe this pad is too dense. It just made it harder to get in, and it didn't really make it more comfortable. So I might just leave it out or find a softer material, but I think so far it's working just fine the way it is. Okay, I measured several samples of the darts. They're about 31 millimeters on average. The tube is 35, so I bought this 2 millimeter thick foam tape and wrap that around the back end and give that a try. Okay, I think I got the gun sorted out. I've now got a pressure gauge right on the gun, and this button resets the pressure, or charges it, so it's set at 25 psi. And then on my screen here, I just got a black dot because I'm dialing it in, but if you can see that black dot, it's kind of up in the sky right now. I put that black dot on my target. At this distance anyway, I'll have to put in different lines for different distances, but that works. Yeah, I already got a round in the chamber. Close the breech, put it on target. That one was a little high, but it's pretty good. It'll always hit within that cross I drew on my cardboard target there. So it's within a 1 foot by 1 foot square. It seems to always be able to hit that. So I think we're good.
Ooh, dead on.
Okay, on the way. Here's my list of materials for the tank, for the StuG. Came to a grand total of $1,268. Here's my build log. You can see I started October 20th, 2025, starting on cutting plywood. And then all the way to today, grand total, 157 hours. Here's a breakdown of the cost in terms of money and hours. The drivetrain was the most, $400 and 37.5 hours. That was because of the $130 I had to replace the batteries, and then the other parts I needed to make the gearboxes that I didn't initially plan. Suspension, $290 and 21 hours. The tracks were 175 and 13 hours. The hull and the paint, this is interesting, it cost almost as much in time and hours to paint the hull as it did to build it. So the hull was $118, 30 hours, and to paint it was $90 for paint and 29.5 hours to do the painting. Gun, $97, 18.5 hours. Quite a bit of effort there. Cameras and electrical stuff was the smaller categories here. So some lessons learned. I would not use a scooter powertrain again. The advantages there were the simple controls, it was quiet, or I thought it was free, because I already had this thing, but I ended up spending, like I said, almost $400 to replace the batteries and add gearboxes that I didn't think it would need initially. It's very underpowered. It was a struggle to get it to work right. And when battery dies, you got to recharge it overnight. So that's kind of a downside of having battery anxiety. Next, I plan to use a snowblower engine. Those snowblower engines are 8, 10, 12 horsepower. They're really cheap, especially right now. You can get, I picked up a running one for $40. So, with gasoline, I can just refill it if I need to keep going. I can change a gear ratio real simple by just changing the pulley on the output shaft of the motor. So it's much easier and cheaper to change the overall gear ratio if I need to. The downsides are it'll be a lot more difficult to set up. I'll have to have controls for throttle, choke, brake, clutch on 2 gearboxes, and speed on 2 gearboxes. And all that's going to be mechanical controls, either a cable or a shift linkage of some kind. So that's going to be the hard part about using a gasoline engine again. It's a lot noisier, obviously, fire hazard, so a few downsides, but it's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot more powerful. The gun, I had no idea Nerf darts could be that powerful. And I did eventually figure out a way to modify the darts to fit the PVC pipe. I like using the small compressor instead of a big air tank. On the Sherman, I had a 5-gallon air tank, which was big and heavy, and just charging it for each shot saves a lot of weight and space. The gun breech worked out really well. I didn't have that in the Sherman, so to have it just use the toggle clamp to open and close, that worked great. The long gun barrel doesn't work well with those Nerf darts. They have to have enough pressure to keep pushing it all the way down the length of the barrel, and because they don't have any momentum. If the air pressure drops, they just stop inside the barrel. So and it took some trial and error to get it to work with a gun barrel that long. The tracks worked great. The belt and using plastic for the track links and guides was perfect. And I learned to put the weight on the center wheels made the turning much easier. It wouldn't have worked without that trick. So that was good. The thing I would do different is the angle on the track guides. I would increase that angle a little bit because it still does. The track guides do catch the edge of the wheels occasionally. So a little bit more angle will get them to catch the gap in between the wheels better next time. I didn't use a sprocket drive. I just relied on the rubber wheel traction, and that made it a lot simpler to build the tracks and do a lot of trial and error to get the track pitch right, or the sprocket pitch right. There was a lot of trial and error on the Sherman. So that simplified things a lot. It worked great going forward. It didn't work in reverse because I pivoted the drive axles, and because the pivot is below the axle, when you're going forward, it wants to rotate the drive wheel back into the track, so that increases the traction. But in reverse, the opposite happens. It wants to rotate the drive wheel forward, which reduces traction. So that's why it has struggles to go in reverse. So next time I can use a fixed drive wheel and adjust the tension on the front idler wheels instead of on the drive wheels. The cameras, the camera on the gun works great, but the camera on the cupola is a wide angle camera for a license plate camera on a car, and it doesn't work great because of the distortion. You have no sense of space and direction. It's really hard to tell if you're near any objects or what direction you're looking. So next time I'd use a camera without that wide angle lens so I can feel better, my space around me. The scale, this is 40% scale and is absolutely as small as you can go and still fit an adult. It's very cramped in there. Um, and I think a 60% scale wouldn't have cost that much more to make. As you can see by the the breakdown of costs, the hull isn't uh, isn't a very big part of the cost. The suspension wouldn't change much, and so I think a bigger scale really wouldn't cost that much more to do. So that sums up my lessons learned. It was a fun project. It turned out really well. Learned a lot, so I think I'll apply those things to my next project, which I already announced is going to be an M18 Hellcat, which I need to get going on. My goal, I need to get this thing done in 10 weeks, so it's going to be fast. Stay tuned.